In today's episode of Dear Chris, the question is from Dan H, and he's asking how we can increase his muscle up reps. So Dan asked, he asked about increasing reps on muscle ups. He said he's basically gotten to the point with his muscle ups where he can get to about 5x5. So he's doing 5 sets of 5 reps of muscle ups. But he'd like to figure out how he can increase the amount of reps in that session. The thing about muscle ups that a lot of people notice when you're doing muscle ups, once you get to that threshold, like that rep threshold that you can go to, you're done. Like you can't do a whole lot else. And this is something that I've been talking about for many years, about the cool thing about calisthenics movements, like muscle ups or weighted calisthenics movements, like weighted dips, weighted chin-ups, that sort of stuff, is that they're self-limiting. And I think that's actually a good thing for training, because the self-limiting capacity of doing these calisthenic movements actually ends up preserving your hormonal profile. If you're training this way, you get a good anabolic response from them, but you can't really you can't do too much, as opposed to a lot of other training methods where you can overdo it because there's no self-limiting element to it. You can just push through it, you can do too much. And especially if people are like overtraining in general, it can lead to an unfavorable hormone profile with too high of cortisol over time. So the cool thing about calisthenics is that they are self-limiting. And when you get to that last rep on your muscle ups, you definitely can't do any more. And then you gotta rest, try it again. So that's a benefit. Now, in terms of increasing reps on muscle ups, what I've done, the most muscle ups I've ever done in a row is, I think, 15. This was back when I lived in New York City. I was doing them daily. In New York City, there's a cool culture in the parks around the city that's like a calisthenics culture. And I actually lived really close to the park where all the Bar Stars guys and all those guys were there, Al Cavadlo. So it was fun. I got to meet those guys and train with them. And it would just kind of be, we would show up and I would roll over there, and some days people would be there doing stuff, other days they weren't. But one thing you notice about that culture, the calisthenics community, they train very often. And it's kind of this idea of like greasing the groove, which where did I first hear about that? I think it was the Russian kettlebell dude that was talking about that. And then I read the convict conditioning book, and he was talking about it. With calisthenics, bodyweight stuff, greasing the groove is extremely useful. And it's this concept that you train often on the same movement. And what happens, especially if you're trying to like break through some sort of plateau or learn a new movement and get good at it quickly, it's more about just like frequency of it, and not necessarily doing too many of them, because you can't really, they're self-limiting, but just doing it often so that your muscles really get into this groove, which is why they call it that. And you find that you could do it for a period of a few weeks where you're greasing the groove almost daily. Anytime you walk by something, just jump up and try to do muscle ups on it, and just keep going like that. It actually rather quickly builds this muscle memory in your body that doing more reps or doing increasingly more difficult calisthenics movements actually becomes simpler. Your body gets used to it quickly, it adapts. Your body's great at adapting and overcoming increased resistance or new things. So a lot of times with these scenarios, your body needs it needs to develop different types of muscle groups or smaller muscles for calisthenics than it usually would in a weight room, for example. So that's one thing I would recommend doing, is just doing muscle ups more often than just like reserving them for your training session. If you're walking by a playground, pop up there, do some. The other way to increase reps that I've found very effective is just adding weight to the muscle ups, where it's similar to doing weighted chin-ups or weighted pull-ups or weighted dips. Once you become extremely strong at doing weighted calisthenics, you can actually do just body weight ones with no effort at high reps. Building up on my weighted chin-ups and weighted pull-ups and stuff, I could basically never train for reps on chin-ups or pull-ups, but I know I could still pop up and do 40 reps of stuff. I did that in the Austin's Fittest Man competition a few years ago. Not really training for reps, I could just do 40 pull-ups. You know, that's a good way to do it, especially with muscle ups. All you got to do with a muscle up at the gym, grab or if you're not at the gym, maybe you have a dumbbell, grab a light dumbbell, like a 5 to 10 pound dumbbell, and just put it between your feet. Just hang on to it between your feet and just start trying to get up to 5 reps with that weight between your feet. And what you'll notice is that just by adding that 5 pounds or that 10 pounds, you not only get a better workout, but then when you go back to bodyweight muscle ups, you can actually do way more of them. So those are the 2 tips: grease the groove and add some weight. So hopefully this was a helpful episode of Dear Chris. If you have any other questions that you want to ask me, just leave them in the comments. I'll read through all the comments. People have been asking some awesome questions, and I'm really stoked about this series and the ability to help you guys with some advice. People also ask me questions over my Instagram account. It's _Christopher Walker. So if you like Instagram, you can go over there and check it out. Just drop a question on the most recent post. And if you want to see more videos like this, subscribe to the channel. I'll see you in the next video.